This was about as bizarre and as easy as it gets.
So the number for me was a number that would allow me to never have to work again.
I feel like we got top.
I went from a sale of $500,000 to in debt.
$192 million.
This is Built to Sell Radio with your host, John Warlow.
So once a year, you go to the doctor, right? They take your blood pressure, maybe they prick your finger and they take a little blood and they give you a sense of your cholesterol level. Maybe if you go to one of those fancy healthcare facilities, they get you to run on a treadmill for a while, see how your heart's doing. You get a checkup. The same thing should be true of your business. When we look at your business through the Value Builder score, we're going to look at it through 8 key drivers that acquirers care about. Whether you want to sell your business immediately or in 10, 20 years from now, these are the 8 factors that business buyers care about. Knowing them now will help you maximize the value of your business going forward. Just go to valuebuilder.com and take the questionnaire. So have you ever wondered how to maintain your negotiating leverage when you sign a letter of intent? Letters of intent usually have what's called a no-shop clause, meaning you have to give up negotiations with anybody else and sort of fall into the arms of a potential acquirer. It's at that point where you can often get ground down and retrading because the acquirer knows you don't have a lot of leverage left because you've said goodbye to all the other potential suitors. Well, my next guest, Mike and Ganesh from Opex, found themselves in that situation, but I think did a tremendous job of maintaining leverage, which they'll explain how they did it in this episode. Lots of good stuff in Opex's acquisition by LLamasoft. In particular, there's some interesting information about how they hired really tough to find employees. They were in the AI or artificial intelligence space. So they'll talk about how they found highly sought after employees, how they bootstrapped themselves to 140 employees without ever raising money, why service companies often struggle to become product companies, and why the inverse is not always true, and why in Ganesh's case, he refers to due diligence as equivalent to giving birth. Here to tell you the gory details are Ganesh and Mike from Opex Analytics. Enjoy. Mike and Ganesh, welcome to Built to Sell Radio.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
How did you two crazy characters get together? Like, give me the backstory on how Opex came to be. Ganesh, why don't you tell us?
Yeah, absolutely. John, before we get there, I want to say a big thank you to you and your show because, we've been big fans of your show and we always dreamt of being on the show while we were going through the diligence processing. Hey, how would we respond to these questions? Hopefully we'll get there one day. And if we get there, how will we answer these questions? So thank you very much for what you're doing here.
That was very generous, Ganesh. I really appreciate that. I'm glad you guys found some value. So how did you guys get to know one another?
Absolutely. So we go back a long way, Mike and I. So I was a junior consultant in one of the software companies I joined. That was my second job out of school. And Mike was one of the top guys in that company. That is back in 2007. Right. So, that company got acquired a couple of times, went to a company called iLog, and then iLog got acquired by IBM, and we worked together through that whole process. So the founding story goes back to 2012, right? And I was deployed in Asia Pacific, and, I was in Manila, and Mike was visiting me from US, and, we were in a traffic jam and traveling from one place to another. Anybody who's been to Manila can tell you that it's a city of traffic jams. So we had a lot of time together in these traffic jams. And, and I'd say, I kind of proposed to Mike saying, hey, would you ever consider working with me on a business idea? And he said yes. And as they say, the rest is history, right? So Mike, you want to add to that and what the company?
Well, what was the idea, Mike? Like, what were you guys setting out to do? Like, what was the original genesis behind Opex, and what was the idea?
Yeah, so the big idea was we were going to take what we knew about supply chain optimization and combine it with this new field that was emerging called machine learning. So that was like a big buzzword at the time.
Dumb down that for me. So what'd you call it? Supply chain
modeling, supply chain optimization. It's basically figuring out.
Yes, go ahead. Figure it out what?
It's figuring out how do you get, you make orange juice, how do you get your orange juice from your factories to the warehouse to the shelf so that you can buy it. And that's
what's the customer pain point? Like, don't I just put it on a truck and the truck shows up at the grocery store and Bob's your uncle? Like, what?
Yeah,
Why is?
You would think about that, but you have to figure out, which truck do you put it on? How do you route that truck? Where do you send that truck to? Because it usually goes to a distribution point first. Where should those points be? Which factory should I even make the product in? So all those little decisions that add up to how do you do this efficiently?
And so you've got the company was designed to be a consulting company that would help orange juice manufacturer to get their product the most efficiently to a grocery store. Was it consulting or was it software or a combination of the two?
Yeah, so it's kind of a combination of the two, but to make it easy for our customers, we kind of presented ourselves as consulting. We said, we'll come in, we have some people, we'll solve some particular problems, and what we'll leave behind is a piece of software that helps you do this stuff more efficiently. And it may even help you predict what the demand's going to be so you can better schedule your workforce and things like that.
Got it. Okay. So I get it, I think conceptually. So take me further. Did you win some clients? Like, would I know any of the names of customers that you won?
Oh, you'd know the names. So we work with basically, Fortune 500 companies. We have a video up on our website from a bottler of Coca-Cola that gave a testimonial about working with us. So we, the way we started is totally bootstrapped it. And Ganesh and I just went out and started selling our services. And once we got some traction, we started hiring some folks. I'm also an adjunct professor at Northwestern, and so we had some connections to some programs there, and we started hiring some great people. And it just seemed like the more people we hired, the more blue chip clients that we got, and the happier our clients were.
I've always wondered what an adjunct professor is. It sounds like an appendage. Like you're not really a professor. You've got sort of like an arm lopped. Like, what is an adjunct professor? What does that mean?
You said it exactly right. If they could pay you under the table, they would pay me under the
Oh, got it.
They would do that. So I show up, I teach my class, the students are happy, and if the students are happy, the program's happy. But other than that, I have no other connection with Northwestern. I just show up, teach, and do my thing.
John, another way to think about it is an adjunct professor is somebody who is just as smart as the other professors, but also lives in the real world.
Okay, got it. Actually has some experience. I'm looking forward to getting the social media blast about putting down press. Okay, so let's get into it. So Ganesh, take me through. I mean, we don't have time for the whole story, but from a taxi cab in Manila, you come up with this idea. Eventually, you got to 140 employees.
Right.
Like, fill in the blanks for me. Was there an inflection point where things started to really grow beyond just you and Mike?
Oh, for sure. Right. I think, we got a project or two, right, as we were talking to customers, and we got to a point where we could hire 4 or 5 people, right? And, I can't name this customer, but we got a chance to kind of co-innovate with one of the largest, fashion companies in the world, right? Okay. And there we kind of discovered our business model, if you will. We nailed what we are all about, working with that customer for about 6 to 12 months, right? And they gave us a lot of business, and we grew to a significant 7-figure business just working with them. And we had other customers too, but we kind of nailed our business model working with them. And then we went to market with that message saying, hey, we're the co-innovation partners. AI is hard. AI for supply chain is a very specialized area, and we are specialists at this. And we're gonna land with you, and we're gonna build software for answering a whole range of questions for you. And that started clicking with the market. So
got it. So the fashion company that you worked with, you were kind of, as in your own words, kind of co-innovating.
That's right.
Were you specific with them about who owned the IP?
In that case, they own the IP. The kind of stuff that we did for them, they own the IP, and we didn't care.
Was that part of your scope of work and part of your contract? It was stated clearly that they own the IP. So how did you go from them owning the IP to reusing the IP? You know what I
mean? We didn't have to reuse that IP. So when you go from a fashion company to a CPG company, from a CPG company to a transportation company, the problem statement changes. It's a different set of IP that you create, right? So we were getting good at that stuff. As we were getting good at that stuff, we also realized that, hey, there are unique blocks that all these customers need, and no one has commissioned us to work on that piece, right? For example, we have a platform for deploying apps. Nobody commissioned us for building that. We, by that time, when we were up to about 15 to 20 people, we had enough funds in the company to say, hey, we're going to start a software unit inside the business that's going to build software that we think all customers would need, right? So about the 20 people mark, we kind of had two parts to our business. One, where we are co-innovating with customers. As Mike said, that's the service angle. On the back end, we're creating IP that's independent of the work that we were doing with customers.
And Mike, how are you guys financing this growth when you went from project-based consulting, if you will, and a few handful of bodies to building a piece of software that you could reuse? Did that require outside investment, or how did you guys finance that?
So we financed everything with cash flow from our projects. So the whole thing was 100% bootstrapped. And as we started building some of the product, we did it probably slower than we would have if we would have brought in capital. But I think we made a decision that we were going to just build the business based on the revenue and basically based on the profits that we were making. And
so did you guys take a haircut on your market rate salaries during this time? Ganesh is laughing. I mean, like, can you think about like what you would have commanded in the marketplace as an AI specialist? Were you paying yourself 100% of that salary, 50%, 200%? Like, give me a sense.
Yeah, I was thinking, what salary, John? What is that?
It's what you live on. Come on. Were you not paying yourself anything?
No. So the first couple of years, we didn't pay ourselves anything or very little, and then towards the end, we did take home a salary, but I don't think it was the market salary.
Would it have been 50% of what you were worth in the market?
Yeah, probably 50% of what we would have, somewhere around there.
So you're investing personally in this business all along the way. So yeah, so it really is, you're all in. It's not outside money.
John, what will help the listener understand is, we came from a product company background, right? So this idea of doing services, co-innovation on the front and doing software on the back end, they usually say this idea is not a great idea, but the thing is, the co-innovation was a new thing that we were doing. Services was a new thing, and we were finding traction. Market was accepting that. But in the back end, the software side, we came from that DNA. We were software people who were doing this new business model, right?
Right. So when you say it's not usual, most services companies dream of having a software product. Right. That never works. But the other way around, adding service onto a software DNA, that usually has got better traction or better legs.
We would say that, in retrospect, that's why it worked out for us.
Ganesh, why is what is it about having a product DNA first and adding services as a layer that you think gave you an upper hand?
Because product is, at least in retrospect, my personal experience is that software is really much harder than services, right? To scale and to build. Okay, here's another way to think about it, right? It takes many iterations to build the right software, right? And the more experience you have, the stronger your DNA component in that, the fewer iterations it takes. So we didn't have the funding to fail 3 times and get it right the 4th time, right? We had the funding to try once and get it right the first time. And the DNA kind of helps us to go in with the confidence that what we're building is what the customer needs and what the market needs. And having the services front end, you get the validation very quickly because our people, our data scientists, were consuming our software. And we had a huge base by that time, 50, 60, 80 users internally who were consuming our software. And we get that validation. So the product enhancement did not require a paying customer for the software. Our folks are validating that what we're building was the right thing.
So you're reading your own dog food, as that old expression.
Pretty much.
The 140 people, Mike, that were give me a sense of how they broke out. Are most of them software developers? Are they consultants? I know I'm sure you had all those, but where's it's a lot of people.
Yeah. So we had of the 140, we probably had 30 to 40 people were developers, and we did our development in India. So we actually grew a development team in India, which also allowed us to self-fund too. So that was another trick that we used to say, let's build a team. We found a leader over there who we could really trust, and he helped grow that team. And so that let us do that from a cash flow point of view. And then probably the remainder of the people, we had a handful of people doing the marketing and admin kind of stuff and keeping things going. But the vast majority were the hot data scientist consultants. It was like that commodity of folks that were doing, that trendy field, doing data science.
And Ganesh, how did you guys go about recruiting? Because data scientists, I mean, like the only people I can think of that would be harder to recruit for would be AI specialists. And you're like matching them together. Like, we want data scientists who can do AI. Like it's got to be the hard. I mean, everybody wants those people. How did you find them?
Correct. I think, we got very, very lucky there because, I think when you hire a data scientist, I mean, that could be a podcast by itself, but, we understood what they were looking for. They were looking for good work, right? Good culture and good coaching. I think those are the three things they were looking for. And, good coaching is something we could solve easily because, Mike's professorial background and the original seeding of the company was with the kind of people that they would all want to work with, right? Good work is because we were working with multiple companies in different industries. There was always a platform for, and the terminology we were using even with our clients was co-innovation. This was not run-of-the-mill consulting work. Right, so the diversity of work existed and the depth of work existed, and finally, the culture is something we had to work very hard on, and we went very first principles on that. Like, it's like everything that we had to do, we were like, what's the right way to do it? Instead of coming up with the bias of background saying, here's how things should be done. We were lucky enough to recognize that this is a new kind of business, right? It's like. And what will work here has to be thought through instead of saying, hey, here's how I did things in this big software company or this big consulting company, because it's neither of those. So we were able to be first principles on a lot of the cultural stuff.
What triggered you to want to sell this company?
So, we weren't actively searching to sell it. We were approached by the buyer, who was LLamasoft. And at the time, we've grown to 140 people. We had ambitions to take more what we've done and turn it into software. And basically at this point in our history, like the only thing backing us up financially was like the mortgage on our two houses. Like that was it. And we were sort of past that point where our mortgages would have even made a dent in things if things had taken a dip. And so it was sort of the right time. Like, the business was going well. The cash flow was good. The projects were good. Like things were fine, but it was just knowing in the background that, hey, we were approached by this company, LLamasoft. We knew them from before. Ganesh told the story of the cab in Manila. At that time, we were competing with LLamasoft, so we kind of knew them there. And then as Opex Analytics, we didn't compete with them, but we'd run into them on occasion on different accounts. So we knew them, knew their culture, and we felt like it was a great fit, and they were going to be a big platform for us to sort of take our group to the next level too.
What was the strategic connection, Ganesh? Like, I don't know LLamasoft. I don't know their product. So like, what is it that they saw in you, and what did you see in them?
Yeah. So a little bit about LLamasoft, right? I mean, when you think about, Mike talked about solving supply chain problems, right? So there's a specific area in supply chain problem solving called supply chain design, right? This is how you structure your supply chain so that it can run efficiently, So they built the software for that kind of work. So they had, pretty much every Fortune 500 company that has a supply chain, not the insurance companies, but that has a supply chain, LLamasoft is a vendor to them in supply chain design, right? So,
got it. And so it sounds like they were a competitor of yours.
So I can understand why you're saying that, but so they were in the standard software for supply chain design. And what we worked on was, how do you bring this new space of AI to solve all kinds of other problems in the supply chain? So it's puzzle solving, and when you think about it, right? But puzzle solving as a structured problem, the original design of a supply chain, but we came in with co-innovation. So
what kind of problem would Opex solve that LLamasoft out of the box software would not have solved? Can you give me like a real life example? Let's go back to the orange juice guy with the orange juice plant.
The orange juice guy. So the orange juice guy has to figure out where should they make the product, which warehouses should they use. That's what LLamasoft was traditionally doing that. And then what we would come in is help them predict which truckers aren't going to show up today, or what's the price you're going to pay for a truck tomorrow. And so we were playing in the white space, or the space that they weren't playing in. I think that was the fit. We were like right next to them, but solving different problems. So it was a nice compliment.
That makes sense. I want to go back to something you said earlier, Mike. I think it was you said the only thing backing you guys up was your mortgage.
Yep.
So, and had things gone south, even the mortgage probably would. So what I'm interpreting you to say is, okay, so 140 people. I'm imagining that those are not inexpensive people.
Right.
So your payroll is millions of dollars a month, I think.
Absolutely.
Certainly million, if not multiple millions of dollars a month. So that's a big nut. And you both got homes. Had you literally, like, are you just joking to say that you had mortgaged them, or you literally had a mortgage, your bank line was guaranteed by your homes?
No, so it's more of a joke. So we never had to tap into it, but we had a tiny line of credit at the bank, but we literally had nothing, no financial backing if things had gone south. Like
Okay.
Well, would have had to tap into our mortgage to sort of put a bigger mortgage on the house, then use that money to keep the business going. We never got to that, but it was that level of, we had cash in the bank, but it was that was it.
And what did you have any sense of what you thought the company was worth? I'm guessing you guys had those conversations between you. Did you have if you can't share the number, that's okay. I'd be curious to know sort of how you arrived at the number. Like, did you think it was a multiple of revenue or EBITDA? Like, how did you think about valuation?
So, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so we sort of thought about it. We were partially consulting, and we knew that had one set of figures, and then we were partially software, and we kind of felt like our valuation would sort of fit in with those numbers. And then, to be honest, we talked about what we thought the value was, and in the AI companies were kind of a hot space in 2019 for sure, and probably even now. So we sort of had some sense of what we thought the company was worth.
Yeah.
What multiple of revenue? Give me a range, Ganesh. Would you have said the software revenue was worth, and then what do you think the services revenue? I mean, just a broad range of whatever multiple.
Yeah. So I think if you had come in as a pure services company, you'd be in the 2x to 3x kind of range, right?
2x of revenue or EBITDA?
Yes, it's revenue, right? I mean, this is a hot space, so the metrics is usually not EBITDA, it's just straight up revenue, right? And there were some, hot shot software startups, like, big time startups, who were founded in 2017, 18 kind of time frame, who, by that time AI had become a standard playbook on how to start a new AI firm. And what we heard was they were raising funds at the 10x kind of valuation, if not more. Right?
So you're thinking somewhere in that range of revenue multiple. And so is this I mean, I know you've been successful in other businesses and you've gone through other exits, but I'm guessing your shares of Opex were at that time, even if you're using the lower end of that valuation range, a fairly significant part of your net worth. Would that be fair to say?
Pretty much, yeah. It's a very easy, fair statement to make. Yeah.
And same for you, Mike?
Same thing. And the other thing we did with the equity too, the equity in Opex Analytics was spread widely throughout our employee base. So it was really spread out very widely across the employee base. I mean, we definitely had advisors as we were going through due diligence who were sort of shocked at how widely it was spread. So
okay. Tell me more. Yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, no. Early on, we when we were getting people to join, we offered equity in the company, and I think a lot of people appreciated the fact that they would have a stake in the outcome. Of course, we could never promise anyone anything for this equity, right? Because probably most likely it would have ended up valued zero if you just looked at probability in general. But we were, I think, fairly as part of our principles that we wanted to be able to offer lots of people equity in the company so that they all had a stake in this thing.
Yeah. So John, actually significant equity, right? And when you're thinking about, hey, how do you recruit and retain data scientists, part of the secret sauce was, look, you own a significant part of this business. I mean, they knew as a percentage what percentage of the business they owned, right? It's not just throwing some numbers at them and saying, X thousand options. They don't mean anything. right? Again, being first principles, we're like, you own X percentage of the company as of today, right?
So I know a lot of people listening to this will have gone through machinations in their mind about how do I share equity? Is it options? Is it phantom equity? Is it real equity? Maybe talk me through how you guys landed on your program. And my follow-up question, in case you want to answer it as part of that, is it sort of, if you had to do over again, how might you structure it differently? Hindsight being 2020.
Yeah. So I don't think we were so strategic in how we set it up. I mean, we set ourselves up as an LLC, just based on some advice we had from our lawyer. And then we basically had stock options that we issued off of that. And again, we just had our lawyer set up a stock option plan so that people would get options in the company. And I think that served us very well. You know, we had every, year or so, we go back to our lawyer and he'd issue a certain X number of new options that we could then distribute to new employees as they joined. So it was fairly simple. We didn't think through it too much. Would we have done differently? Would we have set up a C Corp? I don't know. Maybe we would have thought about a C Corp if we'd known that this was going to happen. But the LLC gave us a lot of tax advantages as we were kind of growing, and gave us some flexibility there that I don't think we would have had with a C Corp.
Ganesh, what would you add to that?
No, I think there are some, in retrospect, I think there are some tax optimization strategies you can take. Right? I mean, I can't, there's something called QSQB, I think something like that, right? There are tax advantages to setting it up as a C Corp, right? That, if you're a founder thinking about setting up option pools, I would say talk to a startup attorney. And that would be what I would have done if I'm doing it again. Talk to a startup attorney who specializes in stock options, right? What we did served us well, and we're not regretting what we did, but I think there are other tax optimized solutions out there, right? Especially right now.
Yeah, and rather than get into all the minutia and the details of that, because we've got people listening to this from different tax jurisdictions, parts of the world where it's treated differently. So I think you're right, Ganesh. I would recommend anybody, talk to an attorney or a lawyer who really specializes in this. Also talk to an accountant who specializes in this stuff, because it gets way past my pay grade very quickly, and it also varies by geography. So, but I think you're right that doing it up front often allows you to either save a lot of money or potentially make different decisions if you have that luxury. So,
right.
But back to my original question. So yes, you shared some equity with key employees and employees along the way, but I'm still hearing, and I want to validate this, that your shares in Opex, the ones you personally held, were still a significant part of your personal financial situation. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, they were definitely a big part of it. I mean, it's, the company was going well, and I have to say that, if we didn't sell or there wasn't an exit, like I wouldn't have been crying, or the family wouldn't have been suffering or anything like that. So, we were in a good position in that sense too. Like, we've been professionals, been working at good careers, up until we started this company. Opex was, shedding good cash and making good money. So we were doing all right. I don't want to paint the picture like we were just, starving to death waiting for these options to exercise. I mean, they were certainly a nice part of our total net worth in some sense. But if it hadn't happened, there'd be no difference between how Ganesh and I were living today versus then. So.
Yeah. And I guess part of me is wondering about the follow-up question, which is like, so why sell? If the big win is not going to make much of a difference to you personally, you're already doing well, why bother selling?
Yeah, I think it goes just back to the risk. We still 150 people. That's a big nut every month. And if something had turned one month or the other, that would have hurt, and we would have been in trouble. We could have gotten in trouble quickly in that sense. So there was always that aspect of it that we had to worry about. And the other one was that, when LLamasoft approached us, they are backed by a private equity firm themselves. And so in some sense, it was continuing what we were doing in another startup, a much bigger startup, a much well-funded startup, a startup with a huge infrastructure and a huge client base, but certainly one that, if you know anything about the PE private equity business, like, they're set up to eventually do something. Like private equity does IPOs, they sell, et cetera. So it kind of felt like a continuation of what we were doing with a bigger backer behind us to take our ideas to the next level.
So John,
That's helpful.
I think sorry, forgot my point. Never mind. Go ahead.
Sell your company and you lose your mind, Ganesh.
No, I got my point back. Okay, I got my point. No, I got my point back. No, so we were struggling with this, like, in trying to think about how to think about this, because Mike and I we knew that even in the worst case scenario, something bad happens, we would be just fine. We got to the point where financially we would be okay, right? And one trick we use is, hey, let's think about employee number 3, employee number 4, employee number 5. What about those people? Like, how would it play out for them in one scenario versus the other? And that kind of made it easier for us to make the decisions that we made.
Got it. That's helpful. And so take us through, you've listened to a few of these episodes before. My question is going to be, so how did you kind of go about shopping the company? I mean, LLamasoft, great. You got an offer. Did you go and hire a banker and sort of tart it up to sell and get some competitive offers?
We didn't. So we, what we ended up doing was LLamasoft approached us, and we weren't in the position to shop the company around. We did not have a banker. We were sort of talking to some bankers, but we hadn't signed anything and didn't have anything firmly in place. And LLamasoft came with an offer, and I think we went back and forth a couple times and kind of came up with a price that was agreeable to both sides. And then sort of from there, we kind of started the process. So we never felt like we were in a position to shop it around competitively or go out and look. And we felt like the offer and everything else that LLamasoft brought, like the culture and their future prospects, felt like the right package. And we knew that if we'd walked away, that offer might have gone away, and there might not have been a better one down the road, and it would have been a lot of effort to get to a better one. So Ganesh and I had to go back and forth on that trade-off. It was a tough decision. Did we know we were making the right decision? No. But this is how this one played out.
Mm-hmm. Often, deal people would say maybe you gave up a little bit of negotiating leverage because you didn't, you kind of fell in a bed with one. Did you ever feel a little vulnerable on that score where you didn't have that competing offer to hold everybody, to keep everybody honest? Ganesh, I don't know. Do you know what I'm kind of getting at?
Yeah. So I think our biggest, leverage we had was the fact that we're okay not doing this transaction, right? We could live with that outcome where the transaction did not happen, right? At least for the good, first, 175 days. The last 5 days, we probably got pretty keen to get it done because so much energy was poured into the process. But I think, without that, I think we would have been in a very difficult situation because, as you know, right, the due diligence process is, there's lots of ups and downs, and it's a pretty stressful process for everybody, right? But I would say the biggest leverage we had was the willingness and the ability, because of our customers and the love that they had for us and the revenue base, that we could just say, okay, if it's not working out, that's fine. Right?
Yeah. That makes sense. What was the most difficult part of diligence?
I think that the most difficult part was just the time commitment. As the way we were set up, Ganesh and I were very involved in all the day-to-day operations of the company. So trying to keep the company running and then trying to do the due diligence. And as a much smaller company, and we were pretty lean, like we didn't have other departments to lean on. So it was all the questions came through Ganesh and I basically. And so that it was just the hardest part was just the time and just all the details about all these different business functions that we didn't have people that we could rely on to answer those questions. And
because you guys are so integral, I'm assuming that a fairly big part of your deal was an earnout where you were asked to stay on. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely.
So we're definitely asked to stay on. We're a people business. So the buyer, LLamasoft, definitely wanted, the people to stay. And, lawyers are pretty smart. Like, I'm pretty sure if I read the fine print, I probably signed away my kids somewhere if I leave this place. So, we kind of went into this deal, not looking to get out of this business, but to continue it in this phase 2 here.
So did you carry some equity into the new enterprise?
We did. Yeah. So without getting into details, but there was definitely some of that too, where we carried some of the equity into the next phase here.
So I'm assuming there's some cash up front. There's a bit of an equity carry where you held some equity in the new, and an earnout where if you hit certain milestones in the future, there's an extra payment of some sort.
Yeah, so it actually turned out there was no earnout. Just it was because our businesses were similar enough that it just felt like it would be difficult to add that in there. And so as we kind of went through the negotiation, it's like we had talked about that and decided it was just too difficult to put that in. So there was other ways that they structured the deal to sort of get the same spirit of those incentives.
Yeah. So John, also going back to your original question, like, what are the hard things? One thing for me, I was a little bit surprised by the long tail of due diligence activities. I mean, there's always the core things that happen. Everybody talks about it. Everybody knows about it, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a long tail of requirements, right? And each one of these things is like a 5-hour, 4-hour, 10-hour activity. But there are just 5, 6, 7 dozen of these small things that that kind of took us by surprise.
Give me an example of something that surprised you personally, like that was so detailed, so into the weeds that you're like, really, you want to know that? Like, give me I'd love for you to share an example, because I want people listening to know like what level of obscurity they might have to go to, or what level of detail that would be asked. Like, can you think of an example where you had to devote 5 hours to getting a piece of data?
Yeah, I mean, it would be something like, there would be obscure questions in a questionnaire, right? Where they'd be like, it's pretty open-ended, like saying, hey, did somebody say something to, like, obviously on things like, let's say, potential lawsuits, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of HR activities, happened in the last 3 years in your company? And something could be around, harassment, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have any harassment issues in your company. You said you can't say no, but they'll ask some question in such a way that you've got to detail something that happened 3 years. It has nothing to do with harassment, but the way they phrase the question makes me want to say, hey, this person said something to this person about this event, right? Mm-hmm. And you say that, the questionnaire goes to the attorney has a 2-hour call with you about it. And there's nothing really in it. Like, it's right. Like, everybody knows that there's nothing in it, but that opens up another questionnaire, and you've got to answer those questions in that questionnaire. And everybody fully knowing that there's nothing here, right? So
did you eventually have to pull up and say, okay, guys, enough is enough? Like, sure. You guys, did you have to have that?
You got to say that, like, and I mean, not for the whole deal. It's like saying, these topics, we're done here, right? And then, that's when, the one thing, we were very lucky that by that time we had built a very good rapport with the CEO of LLamasoft.
Yeah.
Where we could go back and say, there's the attorney to attorney conversation, right? There's also, the business people. We were able to have open conversations, say, hey, look, you got to stop your attorney from doing this, right? Or he could come back and tell us, hey, we need more information here. The deal is a no-go if you don't get that information. I will manage my people in these 4 areas. So we could have that kind of open conversations amongst the business people, because the lawyers do their thing, and they're very good at doing their thing. But you gotta have. It really helped us having that business relationship built out over the 6 months which we were engaged.
Yeah. I know employees were a big part of this piece for you guys. You were sharing, you had options for a lot of your employees. How did those options pay out when the transaction happened? Were they 100% paid in cash, or did they have to carry? Like, I've always wondered how that works with options when you as founders are asked to carry some equity. How did they get paid out?
We got basically all the shareholders. So some of our employees that exercised their options. So Ganesh and I were not the only holders of shares when it happened, but basically everyone, option holders and shareholders, had basically the same thing, where it was a mix of some cash up front and some equity on the backside. So it was kind of equitable in that way. It was legally complicated to do that, but that's how it ended up working out.
What made it legally complicated?
There was a combination of vesting and on the backside options, and then actual option holders actually stockholders versus option holders. There were some different legal transactions there, and then the vesting part on the backside made it a little more complicated than normal. Yeah, I mean, that's an example of like some of the detail that you get into. Like, we never knew that this would be that complicated, but it turned out it was not easy to make sure that that could all work out in a right and equitable way for everyone.
Ganesh, what's your favorite story of sharing the news with one of your employees?
I can't remember anyone. Mike, do you remember any stories? It's all a haze. Like, seriously, it's like, it's like, when I talked to my wife about, giving birth to our 2 kids, and I was like, hey, do you remember how painful it was? Like, and she's like, I don't remember anything. I'm like, I was there in the room. It was painful. It feels a little bit like that. It's like, I feel like I was the pregnant woman in this case.
So it was, the stories I remember are like the long-term employees have been there a long time. They took some equity. They kind of trusted the company, and it was, just the joy on their face that like, hey, this is pretty exciting. Like, this piece of paper I had is actually worth a little bit more money that I didn't think it was worth anything. Like, that was pretty good. And since we spread the equity wide, and since we had employees in India, things like the amount of money that we were able to provide in this exit was nice money for people, lots of people in the organization, and that that made us feel pretty good.
That is very satisfying for sure.
I'd imagine it would be. Did you buy yourselves a trophy? Was there any Teslas in the Tesla seems to be the go-to trophy for people who sell their company. Did you buy a Tesla?
No,
I didn't. I think I bought, maybe took my wife out to a nice dinner, and that was about it.
Ganesh?
Yeah, same thing, dinner, and I upgraded my speakers. That's it.
Boys, do you want to stay married? Let me give you a tip. When you sell your company, you got to do better than dinner. All right? Just a little tip. It's not, take it for what it is.
Yeah.
I'm just teasing. I think this is a great story. I really love the way you describe the strategic fit between you and LLamasoft. There's clearly an adjacency, but also a tremendous strategic fit. So I think it's an awesome story. If people wanted to learn or reach out, I know you guys are busy with your day jobs, but do you accept LinkedIn connections, or what's the best way for folks to stay in touch?
Absolutely.
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best way. It's pretty easy. If you go to LLamasoft, I think you can find our profiles and our email addresses there too. So it's relatively easy to reach out to us.
To track you guys down.
Yeah.
And we'll put the spelling of your first and last names, both of you, in the show notes so people can search you up on LLamasoft's website. This was a joy. I wish you guys all the best in this next chapter, and I'm so thrilled you took the time to do this.
John, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, John. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cool.
See you.
Thanks for listening to Built to Sell Radio with John Warrillow. For complete show notes with links to additional resources, visit builttosell.com/blog. John is the founder of the Value Builder System. To find out how to improve the value of your business by 71%, visit valuebuildersystem.com. John is also the author of Built to Sell, Creating a Business That Can Thrive Without You, and The Automatic Customer, Creating a Subscription Business in Any Industry. Connect with John at facebook.com/built-to-sell or on Twitter at John Warrillow, WARRILLOW. Thanks for listening.